Hello, my name is Zach from Worley Tutorials, and in this video we're going to be talking about the interface of Adobe Illustrator. The cool thing about Adobe is every program that they have very similar features. For instance, they have panels, and all of the programs, they have different panels for your different options, or windows. Sometimes they call them windows panels, window panes. You get it. So if I come over here to the right of my screen, there's all these different little icons, and you can see that as soon as I click on them, they pop up this little extra window here. Now, what you might notice is that when you click on one of them, there are these little tabs. These are the windows or the panels that I'm talking about. So you have the stroke panel, you have the gradient panel, the transparency panel, so on and so forth. And the reason that there's 3 of them in here is because there are 3 in this little section here. If I wanted to expand this out, all I have to do is grab the side of it and drag it out, and you can actually see the title of what these are. The more and more you work with Illustrator, in fact, the more you work with Adobe products, you'll get very, very used to this. On the left side, we have our tools. Now, these do not have their own panels. However, as soon as you click on different options or different tools, you have options up here at the top. These are kind of like shortcuts to your options, really. And then, of course, the panels pretty much stay the same, depending on, of course, which workspace you're working in. But, of course, I'll explain that here in a second. So any tool that you grab, you can obviously use. Of course, a lot of these have shortcuts. Now, here's the thing. I'm not going to sit here and explain every little tool and every little detail, because it is part of a learning process as well, and it's kind of just more fun to discover what exactly these things do. So instead of explaining every little thing, I'm going to explain a few, and then I'm also going to explain how you can discover what these tools do. Basically, it's effective discovering of what you're trying to use. So the very first thing is, if you notice that when you hover over a tool for a second, it not only gives you the name, but also the keyboard shortcut. So after a while, you can get better and quicker at changing these to these different tools. Now, of course, some of them you'll get used to, and some of them you'll be like, I have no idea what that, like magic wand tool. Why is it Y? Why is Y? It's just weird. But really, in Illustrator, you don't use it too often. Well, at least I don't use it too often. But the pen tool you use all the time. So eventually, you'll get used to just hitting the P key to bring up your pen tool. Same thing with the rectangle tool or these different shape tools. Now, one thing I will talk to you about is if you see these little corners here. This is CS6, and so the corners, everything's darkened and the corners are lightened. But if you're on CS5 or actually CS5.5, I think, and below, it's going to be lighter with a dark arrow. That simply just means that you have more options within this tool. So for instance, if you go to your rectangle tool, if you can't find it, just hover over for a second. You'll see the title. Keyboard shortcut is M. But if you click and hold on that tool, you'll see that you have rounded rectangle, ellipse tool, polygon, star, and flare tool. These are all you have to do is keep holding and release on whichever one you want. So now I have the ellipse tool. I can make a circle, and then I can come in here and bring it back to rectangle, and I make a square or rectangle. So that is how you can kind of discover what to do. Now, one tool I'm going to talk to you about specifically, only so that you can turn it off. I'm going to talk about specifically this tool later, is right here, this perspective grid tool. If you click on that, you'll notice that this pops up, and you'll probably freak out a little bit because you're like, how do I get rid of it? I hit the delete button and it didn't work. Okay, well, if you have this tool selected, come up to this little legend, and there's a little X right there. It says hide grid. You just click on that, you're good to go. Otherwise, just click around, hover over different stuff, and see what it tells you to do. The last thing that I do want to talk about as far as the interface is concerned is this little drop down menu right here where it says Essentials. This is the Essentials workspace. If you know that if you click on that, it'll open up other options. If you know that you're going to be doing tracing or specifically typography, then you click on that. It will give you, it's going to change your workspace to be the most efficient for typography. Likewise, if you go to painting, it's going to do the same thing. It's going to give you your brushes, the strokes, symbols. It's going to open everything up a lot more, depending on, of course, what you're working with. Now, the coolest thing about all of this is that if you get comfortable with, let's say you don't ever want graphic styles in there. Well, all you have to do is open it up, hit the X. Appearance you probably want. Let's say symbols, not really that important to me, so I'm going to drag it out and close it out. So you can get rid of these, and then you can go to this workspace dialog or drop down and change it. Let's see, go to new workspace, and you can actually save it as whatever you want. Say okay, new, and there you go. You have your own workspace. Reset Zach. So that means if I happen to accidentally get rid of this stuff, and now I'm not really sure what window is where, I can simply come up here to Zach workspace and reset it, and there you go. All my options are back. So that's a very cool thing. If you tend to get comfortable, I would suggest not getting too comfortable with one specific setting, just so you're always stretching yourself to do more with different tools. So there you go. That's the interface of Adobe Illustrator.